This next session is called X Marks the Spot, and we're going to be talking about scoring, because what we do when we score in ACE, we put an X in the box. So we're going to go right through the scoring procedure, and you might think that we're going in a great amount of detail, and we are, because this is something that you will need to do when we go into the Learning Centre. You will be scoring and you will be expected to follow the procedures. Now, for those of you who have never done ACE before, then you are going to go, oh, I'm never going to remember all of this. Don't worry, nobody ever died of making a mistake while scoring, okay? So,
how many detentions do you get?
but you will be expected to learn the procedures. If you're not sure, then we'll go through the scoring again in the Learning Centre and when you first score, so that you have a thorough understanding. Because this is actually crucially important that you get this right in your Learning Centre. This is one of the foundations of ACE, and it's one of the reasons that it works really well. One of the main reasons that we have students that fail tests is because students don't score correctly. So it is very important that you get this right. So we're going to go through it quite thoroughly here. Your trainer will go through it with you in the Learning Centre again. And then as you score, if you've got any questions, always ask, okay? If you're not sure, ask the question. What do I do next? That's what we would expect our children to do. So that's what we need to do as well. So we'll get started. The ACE Procedures Manual says students are responsible to score all activities, checkups and self-tests except pages with a supervisor score strip. So who is responsible to score in the ACE system? Students. So supervisors, you do not score the students' work. Now, very recently I was at training, actually this year I was at training in one school, and a young teacher came to me and she said, I just don't think I can do this anymore. I can't cope with the workload. And so I was quite intrigued, because I know a learning centre is a busy place, but I was quite intrigued to know what this huge workload was. So I sat with her and we talked about what she did, and her students weren't scoring correctly. So she decided that she would take all their paces home every day and score all their paces. Now she had 30 or 32 children in her class. If you can imagine that, that is an enormous amount of work. No wonder she was struggling under the work. By not allowing your students to score, you are denying them a learning opportunity. So you need to make sure that you don't take over the scoring for the student. It is the student's responsibility to score. They score everything except their PACE test or the supervisor's score strip, and we'll look at those in a moment. Now, we'll go back to what it says here. Score keys are a trust placed in the hands of the students. Students should be taught to handle that trust. Students learn the most from their paces with proper scoring and rescoring. It builds character, godly character. Okay, so the first point was the student scores. The second point is score keys are a trust placed in the hands of the students. Now, how do we teach a child to be responsible? Thank you, Ben. We give them a responsibility, and then we teach them what to do with that responsibility, how to act in that responsible position or whatever it is that we've asked them to do. We don't just give them a responsibility and leave them there. Likewise, we don't just say to them, go score your work, and not train them how to score properly. We need to teach the children to score correctly. And then we need to teach them that it's actually, we are honouring them with our trust by allowing them to do that. Now, will children cheat? The answer is yes. Nearly every child will cheat at some point in their education. Nearly every child. There are a few that don't, but they are very few. Even the good children will occasionally cheat. Now, we are going to do a session, which was one of my favourite sessions to do. I think we have it here. Yes, we're going to do it tomorrow afternoon, and it's called How to Cheat 101. And I'm going to teach you how to cheat.
Can we do that today?
Not so that... No.
Thumbs up in the test.
Not so that you can cheat, but so that you know how to pick up what the children are doing. You need to be trained to see what they are doing. My experience is that we don't need to be taught these things, unfortunately. And children are very, very creative, amazingly creative. And I'm sure that some of them will either grow up to be either entrepreneurs or prisoners.
I was thought you were going to say Prime Minister.
Oh, yeah, well, or a politician. Yes, or a politician. So
Change their ways.
that's right. So we want to actually teach the children that we are actually placing something of value in their hands, and they need to learn to value that. So it is important because we're not only interested, remember, ACE is not just all about education, it's about the whole child. It's about their character, it's about what they learn spiritually and what they learn academically. So the score keys are actually part of their spiritual and character training as well as part of their education. So it is really important that we actually, teach them to do it right. Now, a child can't be accused of cheating if you haven't taught them what to do in the first place. So a great deal of what happens in the Learning Centre will actually depend on how you train the children to score. So we're going to go quite thoroughly through this. It'll take a little bit of time. If you have questions, again, please ask, because this is really important that you get a good understanding of how this works. When should a child start scoring? The procedures manual tells us by the 5th month of your academic year, the students in the ABCs program should be working independently and doing as much pace work and scoring as individually possible. Now, what that means is by the time they are getting ready to go into the Learning Centre, they've finished their ABCs, they're nearly finished their ABCs, they should be able to score and they should be able to work reasonably independently. Will they still need help? Yes, they will. They'll still need you to listen to their reading, they'll still need you to help them with things, but they should have the basics of being able to score. Scoring is simply matching. Okay? You know how when we looked at in the last session, we looked at, is it the same or is it different? That's the same question you ask when you're scoring. Is it the same or is it different? Okay, so that's found on page 31 of the ACE Procedures Manual. If you have a new manual, it may be on a different page number. Student score strips. Students work to a score strip and they must not go past that score strip. Okay, so this is what a score strip looks like. There are different ones and we'll have a look at the different ones, but this is a score strip in most of the paces, so it'll be up on the screen in a moment. There are different types of score strips and we're going to look at some of those too. When the student gets to their score strip, they raise their national flag. So in Australia, this is our national flag. If I were in Indonesia, it would be red and white. If I were in PNG, it would be the PNG flag. If I were in the Solomon Islands, it would be the Solomon Islands flag. So it's your national flag. Now, this is the flag for the monitor. The national flag is the monitor's flag. And the monitor answers yes and no questions. May I score? May I go to the bathroom? May I sharpen my pencil? May I don't know, whatever else they need to do. May I leave the room? So they are all yes or no questions, and they are answered by the monitor. So they will raise their national flag because they want to score. They request permission to score from the monitor. Now, I've been in learning centres many times, and even at staff training, and I will go to somebody's office and they'll look up at me and go, "Score?" Now, my response when that happens is I just stand there and wait, because they haven't actually asked me a question.
Yes.
And then the next thing that we usually get is, "Can I score?" Well, yes, you can. But the question that they should be asking is, "May I score, please?" If we want our children to learn respect and we want them to learn good manners, then we need to demand that in the learning centre. Now, you don't have to be mean or nasty or awful to do that. You can do that in a very nice way by simply teaching them that that is how they ask, and then when they don't do it that way, wait until they do. There's very few students who will not learn fairly quickly if you do that. The other thing that you can do, particularly for older students, "Can I go to the toilet?" "I hope so." And they'll look at you and go, "Oh, may I go to the toilet, please? May I leave the room, please?" But, well, of course they can. They are physically able to. That's what the word "can" is asking. Do I have the ability to? May is asking permission. So if we want to have respect from the children, you get what you ask for. If you ask them to have respect and to ask correctly, then they will do that. But if you don't wait for it and ask for it, then they're going to look at you and go, "Score?" And you're going to go, "Yeah, sure." But then don't expect them to have good manners in other areas, because they're not going to. Okay, so they request permission to score from the monitor. They take only the pace to the scoring station. Only the book. They do not take their pencil. They do not take their eraser. They do not take their phone. And you'll find out why when we do Cheating 101. They do not take anything else with them at all. So it's only the child and the pace that goes to the scoring station. Red pens are provided at the scoring station, and that's what they use to correct their work. All right. At the scoring station, the student only marks a red X beside the number of any incorrect answer. Okay, so here in this pace, you'll see that there are numbers down this side of the page, and there is a space, quite a good space next to that number. If they get something wrong, they put an X next to the question that they got wrong, the number of the question that they got wrong. It goes down here. Now, this is for quite a few reasons. One, it helps them not to cheat, and we'll talk about how they do that at the score station when we do the cheating. But for the monitor and the supervisor, if you are looking for X's in particularly dense text like this is, it can be very, very hard to see them, particularly if some students, you know how some students do that minute, tiny little X. If they've got it in here, it's very hard to see. If it's down here, it's very, very easy for you as the supervisor or monitor to, at a glance, to see how many questions the child has gotten wrong. So a lot of this PACE, this particular PACE, chose it because of this, is quite dense text. It's multiple choice, so the child is going to be underlining the correct answer. So if you think of that and they have these tiny little weak red X's in there, it gets very, very difficult for you to see them. If you teach them in all of their PACEs that the X goes beside the question number. Now, how does that work in math when they have this sort of thing here where you have 3 questions across the page? Same thing, the X goes beside the question number, okay? It just makes it so much easier for the supervisor to see rather than having it in text somewhere.
Question with that. What if it's like a 21 and then it's got like an A and a B? Is it, and they get like B wrong? A is correct, but B is wrong.
What is the question number? Is the A or B the question number, or is the number of the question number?
Yeah, so it goes, yeah.
If it's 21, A and B, 21 is the question.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool.
So let me just see if I have an example. Probably don't in these ones because these are all junior PACEs. I'll show you later in one of them how you do it. If, like some of them, particularly in the senior ones in English, they have a passage of whether that they have to correct the grammar in the passage, and they can have 10 or 12 or 15 things in there that are wrong. Okay, what I used to teach my children was the passage is wrong, so you put the X next to the question. You don't need to put an X for each one. What you need to do is you need to go back and redo that passage and check each one of those and make sure that they are right, because then that's reinforcing the learning rather than putting the X on this one. Everything else is right, I just have to change this one. We don't want them just to, and of course they're going to do it if you know, at some point. We don't want them just to memorise the right answer from the score key and to go back and go, oh, that's how I fix that. That's better than nothing, but it's far better if they just put an X next to that question and actually have to rethink the question. So, yep. So the X goes beside the number of any incorrect answer. So it's the number on the question. Okay, and then when they have marked that whole section, so for this one, it would be this page and this page. It says score pages 11 and 12. When they've done everything and checked everything on those pages, they then put a red X in the box, even if they got some wrong. That one there is saying, I have done my first scoring of this page, or these pages. So that's what it looks like here. Score pages 10 and 11. So, and you can see that there's a red X in that box. So that is done regardless of whether they got everything right or whether they got some errors on their pages. Okay, so after scoring. So even if they have errors, what they do now is they leave the red pen at the scoring station. They never ever take the red pen back to their office. They put the score key away, and you need to train them to do this. Your score keys should be in a box or something that is away from the scoring table, or not sitting open on the scoring table, so that they can be monitored, so that you know where your score keys are and what's happening with them. To have them loose in the classroom is not a good idea. It encourages cheating. So if you have them loose in your classroom, you need to rethink that process of how you keep the score keys, and just get a box or something to put them in, and maybe some files or something to put them in. Okay, so they put the score key away. They put the score key away for, why do they need to put the score key away?
Keeps it tidy.
Keeps it tidy. Why else? They may not be the only student in that room that is using that score key. So when the next student comes, if they've put the score key away, the next student knows where to find it. They don't have to go hunt the score key. So it's a courtesy to everybody else in the learning centre. It also means that you can keep a check on what's happening with the score key. So they put the score key away, they return to their office. And then if they have any answers that are wrong, they erase their incorrect answers. So everyone that has a cross next to it, they should erase their answer. If it's underlining, they should erase the underlining. And this is why it is so important that students work in pencil in their paces. Students always work in pencil in their paces. The student then finds the correct answer. So this may mean that they have to go back into the text of the pace, or they may have to redo the sum, or whatever it is that they need to do. They find the correct answer, they correct their mistakes. So we are reinforcing the right answer here. They then put a pencil X in the second box on the score strip. So you'll see here, this box here has a pencil X in it. Now when the monitor is coming to see the student to find out what they want, and they say, may I rescore my work? Then they're going to be looking for that X to make sure that the student has actually corrected their work. Because this one here is saying, I've scored the work for the first time. This one here is saying, I've corrected my mistakes. So I've gone through and I've erased everything, and I've made sure now that I have the right answers there. Okay, the student raises the national flag for permission to rescore. Now, I used to train my children that if they were rescoring, they had to ask to rescore. They asked to score, and if they were rescoring, they used to say, may I rescore? So that the monitor knew exactly what was going on. If answers are correct, the student circles the red X next to the question number with a red circle. So for example, this one here was incorrect. The student has corrected their work and has circled that one to say it's correct. The student has corrected their work here, but it's still incorrect, so they haven't circled that X. So that indicates that that one is still not quite correct. If all the answers are correct and they have circled all the red X's next to the questions, they put a red X in the third box of the score strip. So they have their one here saying, this is the first time I've checked all of them. I've corrected my mistakes. This one is in pencil. And then this one here now says, everything is now correct. I have checked it all against the score key and it's all now correct. The student then goes back and does another check through their pace and checks that they have answered everything and corrected everything. When they've done that, they circle the page number with the red pen at the scoring station. And that says everything on this page is now complete. So that's the double check. Okay? Everybody clear on that so far? Yeah? Cool. They then leave the red pen at the scoring station, put the score key away, and returns to their office and continues their pace work. Now that's what happens if they have an error in their pace work. What happens, hang on. What happens when they don't have any error is that after this step here, where they've scored the pages, they didn't have any errors, so they didn't need to put any crosses next to any questions. So they are now complete. So after that, they go back, they check that they've done everything, they circle their page numbers, and they just go on with their work. Okay? All right, so we'll just scoot through this. Okay, answers may vary. You'll see this written particularly when they have to write a sentence, or if they've got to use a word as a adjective or a verb or something like that. Answers may vary will be written, and there'll be a yellow section down here for the supervisor to initial. Okay, so they do the normal scoring procedure. So they go, they do their scoring. If their answer is different from the score key, the student goes back to their office and raises this flag, the Christian flag, for the supervisor. This is the supervisor's flag. The supervisor is responsible for all educational and academic questions. So if my answer was different to the score key, then that is a supervisor question, not a monitor question. And the supervisor will come and talk to the student about whether their answer is correct or incorrect. Okay, so the answer does not have to be exactly the same in this case as the score key, but it must show that the student understands the content and has followed the instructions. For example, often in the senior PACEs where you have the answers may vary, the student is required to tell you two things. So the question might say, write a sentence that has nouns and adjectives in it, all right? So when you're checking that, you need to check that the sentence has both nouns and adjectives. If they only have nouns, then they've only got it half right. If they only have adjectives, they only have it half right. So if they only have adjectives, they're going to have a terrible sentence anyhow, because the adjective describes the noun. So you need to make sure that they've fully answered the question and that we're not giving them marks simply for writing anything and filling the space. So that's something that you need to be aware of at that point. If correct, the supervisor signs the page with the green pen. Supervisors use a green pen. My kids always used to call it the power pen. So that's what supervisors need to have. If incorrect, the supervisor helps the student to find the correct answer. Does the supervisor tell the student the correct answer? No, because then what is going to happen is every time that they find something they don't know, this flag is going to go up. Oh, I can't find the answer to this. And you tell them. And so the next time, I can't. Who's doing their work? The supervisor is doing their work. Learn to ask good questions. I can't find the answer to this. Where have you looked? Have you read the text? Oh, that's always a good idea. If they say, yes, I've read the text, okay, so tell me about it. What's it about? You're going to know straight away, have they actually read it or not, if you ask them to tell you what it's about. So 90% of the time that a student can't find an answer, it's because they have not read the text. What they've done is they've skimmed to find the answer. So you need to, that's the first question you always ask. Have you read the text? Now there's very few children who'll actually say, no, I haven't read it. Most of them will go, yes, of course I've read it. But very few of them will actually say, no, I haven't. So when they say yes, think of a question to ask them. Okay, so let me see. All right, so where do vegetables come from then? If I have Sally here and she says, I can't find the answer, and the question is, vegetables are picked at the house, street, farm. So, and Sally goes, I don't know the answer to this one. Well, Sally, have you read it? Yes. Well, here it says very clearly, vegetables are picked at the farms. So I would be looking at that and I'd be going, I wouldn't tell her that. I would simply say to her, have you read this page? Would you read this page to me now? Oh, look at that, vegetables are picked at the farm. How about that? Don't do their work for them. Your job is to help them to find the answer, not to find it for them. Once the answer is corrected, the supervisor signs the page with the green pen. Okay. Answers may vary, can look very different in different paces. This one says, score this page. Are any of your answers different? They may be right. Talk with your supervisor. And then this yellow part here, this yellow part always indicates an action for the supervisor. Okay? So where it's highlighted in yellow, it is always an action for the supervisor.
Is that going to be like below the score strip, or is that in place of the score strip?
It can, that one is a score strip,
Okay.
but this one here is different. This one here is below, so the student has actually done this, and here what the supervisor is required to do. If needed, the student should use Math Builder and flashcards for daily drill. Okay, so this is, if the student doesn't understand this, do they need some extra work to build them up to this level? This one here says, at this point, the student is expected to divide the words according to the phonetic sound, not syllable rules. Okay, so the supervisor checks that they're actually dividing according to this phonetics. So it can be a whole different raft of things. And with the senior paces, sometimes it will say, actually in word building paces, it will often be underneath it. The student will have to have checked something and it'll be underneath. So there's a whole different, we've got a few examples here as well. So this is in a junior pace, this one here. Ask your supervisor, please score pages 33 and 34. Okay, so this is from a word building pace where the students have to actually write sentences. Now, one of the big things that I see when I go into schools is that oftentimes supervisors will simply sign that off because they see it's been filled in. They don't actually read the sentences. So Johnny soon works that out. You know, kids are pretty smart. And all of a sudden they go, ding, teacher's not reading this. All I need to fill it in is to fill it in. And they don't actually do what they're asked to do. I've actually seen a pace where every single page in a word building pace, let me see if I can find one. Here we go. Here we go. This one says, write a sentence for these spelling words. I've actually seen a child write exactly the same sentence all the way down the page and the supervisor signed it. So supervisors, you need to take your job seriously and you need to make sure that you're actually reading what the child has done. So this one is fairly simple. Write a sentence for each of these spelling words. But when you may get some that if they're learning something in an English pace, you may get one that says, where is an English pace? This one. That says, use the following words as adverbs or nouns or something. Or this one is a does do one. So this is a, yep. So there's none in this particular pace. But you know, if they say use the word as a noun or an adjective or whatever, you need to make sure that they're actually using that word in the right way so that you're marking what they're actually doing. So that's those ones. Now this one is one that I love to use as an example. This one is out of an English pace and it says, write a thank you note to your mother. Now some of the examples that I've actually seen are, dear mother, I want Vegemite sandwiches. And the supervisor signed it. Now, is that a thank you note? No. So the child has not followed the instructions, but they're getting marked correct. We need to make sure that we're doing it. Dear mother, I like grapes in my lunch. Often it's about food. That's not a thank you note. Dear mother, thank you for the grapes in my lunch. That's a thank you note. A thank you note should have the words thank you in it. It's actually reasonably simple, isn't it, when you stop and think about it? But I've seen this letter, I have seen so many times with, it's not a thank you note, but it's been marked correctly. Please, supervisors, be diligent in what you're doing in the students' paces, because you are the ones, when you mark that, the child thinks that they've done something that is right. So it's important that we get it right. If you don't know, if you're not sure, ask someone. Okay, what if the student has no incorrect answers? We've done this, we'll just go over it again. The red X is placed in the first box of the score strip and page numbers are circled in red pen. The student leaves the red pen at the score station, puts away the score key and returns to their office to continue on their work.
Kathy,
Yeah.
what if the score strip is halfway up the page?
Yes, that's fine. They can still, they stop and do their scoring as soon as they get to the score
Do they
strip.
circle the page number?
No, they don't circle the page number until everything on that page has been completed. So that circle at the bottom is saying, I've done this, I've scored it, I've checked it, I've rescored it if I need to, and there's nothing else that I need to do on this page. That's what that red circle is for. Okay, so if you have a score strip that is halfway through the page, then no, you would not circle the page. What if the student still has wrong answers after rescoring? So they've done this initial scoring, they've circled, they've put their X's down next to their question numbers, they've gone back, they've rubbed it out, they've put what they think is the correct answer in, they've gone back and it's still wrong. Okay, now what they do is they circle any correct answers, get circled, any that are incorrect, they leave the X there and do not circle it. Now, some schools ask the students to put a second X next to it. I don't ever ask my students to do that because it's like sometimes they might get something wrong 5 or 6 times. You're going to end up with this nice little line of X's that it's not only a mess, but it starts to get to the student and they go, oh, I'm never going to get this right, you know. So the one X is quite sufficient. So I don't believe they should ever put more than one X there. So the student goes back to their office and works to find the correct answer. Now this is where the value of actually teaching your students to tell the monitor when they are rescoring actually happens. Because if the monitor is allowing the child to go and rescore, and they go back to that same child and they look at this pace and they go, oh, you're rescoring this one again. Now, after 2 or 3 or 4 times, that child's starting to get to the point where they're getting really frustrated, and we don't want them to get to that point. So that's when the monitor should advise the supervisor that there is an issue with this child. And they should say to the child, just leave it for a moment, put your supervisor's flag up and your supervisor will come and talk to you about that. Okay? Don't leave them to try and do it 50 times and get all upset and worried and anxious about it. It doesn't help anyone. And likewise in those math paces where they have the big long division and long multiplication, you know, if a student gets one of those wrong and they get them wrong the second time and they've got to rub it out and do the whole thing again, they can get quite distressed about it. So you need to be aware of what they're doing, and monitors can be absolutely invaluable in these situations. They are so important because they're the ones that are going backwards and forwards and allowing the child to score and rescore. So they're the ones that see this. Now, monitors, you need to be going to your supervisor and saying, Johnny's got a problem. He's done this long multiplication 3 times and he's really getting upset about it. Now, what I would actually do in that situation, and you need to work this out for yourself, but I'd actually say to the child, put your maths away for a while and go and do something else until the supervisor comes, okay? And then as the supervisor, I would work through that problem with Johnny, make sure that he gets it right, because if he gets it wrong again, it's really going to be a big issue, and it can become a real mental block to them, and they go, I can't do this. So that's when you need to be really on your game there and make sure that he gets it right. Get him to score it. If you need to do the next one with him, do the next one. Get that page finished, make sure it's all right, and then get him to do something else, to move on. Even if he doesn't finish his goals in maths that day, it doesn't matter. You need to look at how the child is working and make sure that they're always able to go on to the next thing. Tomorrow, when Johnny does his maths, he might be doing something else, or he might be going back to that same thing. So in the morning, you just, as you're going past Johnny's desk, you just say to him, if you have trouble with the math, put your flag up. Okay? So he knows that you're there to help him. And it's not, oh, I'm so dumb, I've got to ask the supervisor again. It's, oh, I just can't do it. I'll put it up. I'll get some help, and it's not a big issue. Okay, so once the answer has been found, the rescoring procedures start again. So they put their flag up, they go, they circle, they put their cross there if they're finished, and then they go back. Scoring is simply matching. Is it the same or is it different? If it's the same, it's right. If it's different, it's wrong, is the rule of thumb. Now, of course, with answers may vary, ones that has some flexibility. If it's not the same, mark it wrong. Now, a lot of people say to me, honesty is the best policy. I'm sorry, honesty is the only policy. There is no other. It's not the best, it is simply the only policy. We need to make sure that the children understand that being honest when they score is nothing to do with you. It's everything to do with them. It doesn't affect you if they cheat. It doesn't affect you if they do the wrong thing, but it does affect them. So, you know, they need to learn that and they need to know that. Yeah, so it's when we talk about cheating that I talk more about that. So we'll go through some more of those things when we do talk about how to cheat, because you'll be surprised at how many ways there are to cheat. But we also need to think of the long-term effect on what happens to children when they do cheat and all of those sorts of things, because it is actually an implication of what's going on in their life and what's going on in their heart. So. Okay, so does everybody have a fair understanding of how to score? Yeah? Any questions?
Why would the student put the cross in the middle section of the scoring strip to say the correct mistakes if they haven't checked that the mistakes have actually been corrected yet?
Okay, when that pencil one in the middle, that's what you're talking about. Okay, so that's this one here. So they've put their red cross here. They've gone back to their office. What that is saying is that they have gone back, they've erased everything and they've redone it. Okay, so it's not actually saying that the mistakes are now correct. It says, I have corrected all my mistakes. That's what that is saying. So that's just the way the ACE procedures work. Some schools actually do this, and I don't mind if schools do this. Score page, instead of putting a cross here, they put a 0 if they got nothing wrong, or they put the number of errors that they made. So if they've got a 3 in there, it means that they made 3 errors in that section of work that was being scored. If they put a 0, it means that they've... Now, I don't mind if schools do that. If that works for them, that's fine. And likewise here, they put that they've then corrected 3. So that they, you know, it's just another way of saying, well, so if you want to put a 3 there and a 3 there, if you got 3 wrong, that's fine. But it's just a way of saying, yes, I've gone back, I've checked that everything that has an X, I've fixed up. So that's all that's for. Any other questions? No? Everybody's happy?
What do you do if someone is, maybe you cover this in cheating, but like when they rescore, they just tick them all right? Or if they're wrong, then they tick them right?
We do cover that in cheating.
Okay.
But, look, to some extent, that's something that if you train them up, hopefully they won't do that. Often they will try it to see if anybody notices. One of the things that I recommend that you do in the Learning Centre is you do random checks on the paces, and that way if the monitor doesn't pick them up, you'll pick them up. It doesn't take very long to pick up, you know, even if you don't do every child, like you can either do it one way or another. What I used to do was I used to have 1 day a month. I would stay back, I would take 1 pace off every student's desk. I think I had about 43 at that point in time. And we as staff would just sit there, we would go through the pace and against the score key, just 1 page, that's a random check. If you don't find anything, it goes back to the student's desk and it doesn't go any further. If you did find something, you'd investigate further and the students would get detention, demerit, whatever you decide was a suitable way of dealing with it. But I actually think ACE has a saying, inspect what you expect. If you don't ever look at it and don't ever check it, then anything is okay. But if you expect more than that, you need to spend the time to actually look at it and check it. If you've got a really sharp monitor, particularly an experienced monitor, monitors can be absolutely amazing in a learning centre. If you get a good monitor in your learning centre, they can pick up so much of what's going on. Kids' body language is quite often very easy to read. So a monitor will often be able to tell from the way a child does something or the way they're acting or moving or facial expressions, whatever, that something's not right, because kids will often give themselves away, and you can then follow that up. But a monitor who really knows the system will actually, number one, everybody has a space in the room where it's the spot that they stand. Okay, I always say to monitors, your spot should be where you can really clearly see the scoring station, so that even if you're not actually looking at it, it's in your line of sight and you can see what's going on. Now, if you see a child and they're just going circle, 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 gone, pretty easy to work out that they're not actually checking anything off. When you actually score, the way I always teach people to score is you should not have your red pen in your hand when you score. I always teach that, because how many of us have score keys that have red marks all over them because the children actually mark the score key instead of their pace. So for people who are right-handed, the pace goes on the right hand, the score key goes on the left side. You open the score key. This is terrible. I've got a maths score key and an English pace. And you find question 31, okay, and you just follow it down. These fingers, one on this page, one on this page. They only stop if they get something wrong, then they pick up their red pen, put the cross there, put the red pen back. if they're doing that when they score and when they rescore, it's actually fairly easy to see if they're not doing the right thing. Because no child who's just going to go back and circle is going to bother to open their score key to the right page. So that's, what they'll do is they'll go. I've actually seen children go to the score table, put their pace there, pick up their red pen, not even get the score key and go circle, 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 circle. Because I know it's all right. Oh, do you? Good. Okay. Then you won't mind double checking. Get the score key, do it properly. So I've seen children do that. I've also seen them just open a score key, maths when they're doing word building, and do the whole circle, 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 circle. Now, if you see them doing the circle, 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 circle thing, straight away you know they're not checking anything. So there are things that give it away. And we will go more into those things when we do the cheating. But yes, you do need to be alert and aware, and because scoring is so foundational to what we do, it's really important that we get it right. So there is no foolproof way of doing anything. And, the Bible tells us that the heart is deceitfully wicked. And so most of us will try to do things the easy way. But really, often doing things the easy way ends up in a fall at the end of it. And the thing that most often happens when children do things the easy way or cheat is that they fail their pace test. And that's, that can end up being a really difficult situation and causing a lot of problems to the child and to the supervisor. So, it's far better if you can catch them and instill in them that desire to do the right thing. That's really the best thing to do. Second best thing to do is to be really diligent in watching what they are doing, and that's why you really do need to have a monitor who is doing a monitor's job. If the monitor is busy answering academic questions, which happens in a lot of learning centres, then the monitor is not free to be able to watch what is going on. The monitor's the eyes and the ears of the learning centre. And so while the supervisor is in an office concentrating with a child on whatever it is that they need to learn, the monitor is the one that is actually going all around the learning centre to answer all the flags for scoring and this and that and the other, and is actually seeing what is going on. So they're the eyes and ears for the supervisor. So to train up a good monitor is well worth the time and effort, because they can make a huge difference in your learning centre, and they will often be the ones that are really tuned in to what's happening with the children. And they're the ones that are feeding all of that to the supervisor. So if you've got a good monitor in that case, they'll pick it up real quick. Yeah, real quick. Stephen.
One of the schools I was in as a student, we actually had to earn the privilege of not needing a monitor to check out our paces at the scoring station. So if we went out and marked our paces, we would have to stand there, hand up, monitor would come, they would check it, tick the page. So it's only if you got privileges later, like you kind of proved you could make sure you crossed your T's, dotted your I's, had any handwriting, that kind of thing, that you could then actually go back and continue with your work without having it checked by a monitor.
And in a smaller learning centre that works really well, but in a large learning centre it's not really possible. But that is something that I would employ with children that are not going to focus. That would be a good method of, a child who perhaps is ADHD and really finds it difficult to focus. Although often ADHD kids are the ones that are best at scoring, because they are really, they're really rigid in how they do things sometimes. So they like the structure. And so it depends where they are on the spectrum. Autistic kids too are often really, really good at scoring because they like it to be exactly right. But it's often the ones who are most prone to cheating are not the kids with problems. They're the ones that are most prone to doing what is right. The ones that are most prone to cheating are the smart ones. The ones that don't need to cheat. They're the ones who most likely will because they can. So, yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? So, yeah. But yeah, there's a whole heap of different methods that you can use to watch what is happening. I had one point where my kids actually had little tags that they used to have to take to the scoring table. They either had an S or an R. An S meant that they were scoring, an R meant that they were rescoring, and just a little bit of cardboard that were with an S or an R, and the monitor would hand them to them. And then it would be easy to go, right, you were rescoring, which ones were wrong? Okay, yes, I see you've done those. But we had a problem with kids who were cheating, and so that was one of the ways that we did. There's a multitude of ways that you can work through that and work out different things that work in your context for the students that you have. Anything else?